Hello there again, Year 12. Today we're doing dot point 9.2.3.5 from Maintaining a Balance. Distinguish between active and passive transport and relate these to processes occurring in the mammalian kidney. So let's check out what we actually need to do first. So what we're doing for this particular dot point is distinguishing, okay? When we distinguish, we just basically give the differences between. So we're looking at the differences between active and passive transport, and then we need to relate these to processes occurring in the mammalian kidney. So mammalian just means mammal, so what happens in kidneys of mammals, okay? So we did do this, started your first topic of year 11. We do a little bit on it, but this will probably be a memory fresh as well for a lot of you in terms of passive and active transport. So passive transport includes diffusion and osmosis, okay? And there's two types of diffusion: simple diffusion, which just happens, and facilitated diffusion, which needs certain channels in membranes and things like that to actually be opened up for it to happen. Either way, it involves the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration along a concentration gradient, okay? Key point there. The other key point is that it does not require energy, okay? The downside of it not requiring energy, or kind of the exchange for that, is that it's a reasonably slow process, okay? So you can see here, this is an example of a lipid bilayer, which is our cell membrane, okay? On this bottom part, there's the cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is what's inside our cell. The extracellular fluid means outside cell, okay? So the fluid outside of the cell. And you can see that here, whatever this molecule is in very high concentration, so it slowly diffuses across the cell membrane until it's got equal concentrations on both sides, okay? So for passive transport in a cell membrane, the molecules need to be small enough to move between other molecules and non-polar, so that they can pass through that lipid bilayer, okay? That is only for cell membranes, okay? Diffusion and osmosis, and diffusion in particular, can happen in other places. Diffusion can happen anywhere, okay? So active transport requires input of energy, okay? Key point there. And also, molecules generally are moving from areas of low concentration to areas of high concentration. So they're moving against the concentration gradient, okay? In a membrane, it often generally involves a carrier protein. So something within the membrane that lets it happen by expending that energy to transport things across. So here's just what I think is a good example of moving around a concentration gradient. So passive transport moves along a concentration gradient, okay? So from high, like this little person up the top, high up on the mountain, to low, okay? If we're pushing, say, a big boulder rock from high to low, it's easy and it doesn't take a lot of energy. It doesn't take any energy, really. If you're on a steep enough hill, you just let the boulder go. Okay, so that's passive transport. However, with active transport, we're transporting things from low, so low concentration, to high concentration. So it's similar to this hill where we're transporting a big rock boulder from somewhere low to somewhere high, okay? We need energy to go against a concentration gradient from low to high. And it's hard work, okay? Pushing a boulder up a hill takes a lot of energy, obviously. Okay, so that's just a bit of a summary. So distinguishing between active and passive transport. Active transport requires energy, and things tend to move from low concentration to high concentration. Passive transport is diffusion and osmosis. It does not require energy, and it goes along a concentration gradient from high concentration to low concentration. So these are just some examples of passive transport and active transport in a membrane. So you can see all of these parts of passive transport are moving from where there's lots of it to where there's not a lot. So from high concentration to low concentration in all of them, okay? And there's a facilitated diffusion just with that helper. So some certain substances can't fit through this membrane, so they have to wait until this protein opens up and gives it a gap big enough to fit through. Okay, active transport can generally go against a concentration gradient, so from low concentration to high concentration, and it requires energy. So ATP is the form of energy that we use for active transport. So each of those different processes occurs in different areas of the kidney, okay? Movement of water through osmosis to be reabsorbed back into the body is a type of passive transport. Diffusion of salts also happens in our nephrons of our kidney to be reabsorbed by the body. That happens in what's called the proximal convoluted tubule. I'll show you a diagram at the end of this. We also do it in more detail in the next stop point. Okay, so I'll give a bit of a brief overview and then more detail in the next one. And some nitrogenous wastes like urea and ammonia can also move by diffusion. Active transport, on the other hand, it also occurs in nephrons in the kidney, but it occurs with generally different substances. So glucose and amino acids are reabsorbed from the kidney back into our body, which is against the concentration gradient. So we do have more glucose already in our blood, but we want to keep all the glucose that we can because that's our energy. Extra nitrogenous wastes like uric acids, hydrogen ions, they're all added to urine by active transport, okay? A sodium pump, which is a type of salt pump basically, also can actively transport salts from the urine back into kidney cells if we need more salts, okay? So just a little thing to note, the sodium pump mechanism also helps reabsorb water into the body. So it kind of goes hand in hand. The active transport of salts, so putting energy in, also helps draw water out of the urine by osmosis because suddenly there's a high concentration of water and a lower concentration of water where the salts have just been moved to, okay? So this is a bit of an overview of where these processes occur, okay? So this is a map of our nephron. We have what's called a glomerulus, where the blood comes in, and then certain things are allowed to pass into the start of the nephron in the kidney, which is the Bowman's capsule. Then it moves along a proximal tubule, a loop of Henle, and a distal tubule, and then all goes into a collecting duct, okay? Again, we will do this in more detail later on, but this is just to give you a bit of a visualization and some, colours and things like that to help you understand where active transport happens and what for, and where passive transport happens and what for, okay? So you can see NaCl is sodium chloride, which is just a salt. So salts and nutrients are actively transported out of the proximal tubule. Bicarbonate ions, water, and certain other salts are moved passively, okay? When we head down the loop of Henle, on the descending bit, so the first bit, water moves out passively, okay, through osmosis. When we get to the start of the ascending loop, salt is moved out passively. As it goes further along, salt can also be moved out actively if it's needed, okay? Again, some more active transport of salts. This time in the distal tubule, bicarbonate ions are moved actively rather than passively, but water is still moved passively, okay? And then once it gets into the collecting tubule, Salts can move out actively. Urea and water can move out through passive transport. Okay. Again, don't panic too much. This is an overview. We will do this in more detail in the next dot point. Have fun. Oh, hang on. I have one more slide. Yeah, this is another sort of coloured diagram, okay? So we can see passive transport and active transport. And as you can see, as it moves along around here, the higher the salt concentration gets, okay? Okay, now you can enjoy.